Our next conversation is going to look at someone's life story. We have had several conversations looking at people who have told their stories or whose stories have been told and captured in form of a book. And it's always interesting looking back and seeing. So this is somebody telling their story. This is somebody telling us what makes them who they are, the influences that they've had in life, the kind of experiences that they've had and how they're influencing others in life. Today is another one, and his name is Dr. Juma Mukhwana, My Passion for Change. Dr. Juma Mukhwana is the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Industry in that ministry called MITI. MITI is what?
MITI.
The Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry.
MITI.
That was a nice ambush.
It's called the MITI.
MITI.
Daktari, good morning.
Thank you. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Interesting book, interesting read. We're going to talk about it. Your journey in life up to where this point where you are, top in the civil service as a principal secretary, and what that means. But Siti will welcome you with the day's proverb. Siti, patia daktari the proverb for the day.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week are from the kingdom of Lesotho. Houses built close together burn together.
Houses built close together burn together. P.S. What's your interpretation of this proverb?
I guess that if we are very close in our ideologies and in our thinking and in the way we do things, then it's like our fate is sealed. Our end result will be similar. So it's like more like birds that flock together. Also thrive together.
Birds of a feather flock together.
And thrive together.
And thrive together.
So our fate is really the same. Yeah.
Is it a good thing or a bad thing? In this particular case,
yes,
the people of Lesotho were bringing in fire and showing destruction.
Fire is not necessarily bad. Sometimes it creates renewal. That's how if you look at our ancestors, when we wanted to plant a new crop, we burned so that we could get new life. So yeah.
That's a nice one.
Yeah.
My Passion for Change. This is your autobiography, which is just out. We've had people here who've come after a long career in whatever field. They've decided, you know what, I want to tell my story because I want to own my story. And they tell it at many times at certain ages, right? Why did you decide to write your story and tell your story?
Yes, because when I look at where I've come from and where I've reached, achievement is not about age. It's really, when I see the gap between where I started my life, and I'm sure you've read it, in the village in Rwanda, playing the makeshift football with my age mates, and where I have reached on a global stage, really. I think that I have a story to tell, and so I'm just eager. I can't wait to tell it. Yeah, because a villager from a small place in Rwanda all the way back to the University of Nairobi, to the US, and work in different fields in education, in agriculture, and now in industry. And in that process, I have learned quite a bit. And part of why I thought this story is important is then sometimes as we travel along the journey of life, we pick many ideas and we also pick many lessons. And sometimes it's good to share. So I just felt, so writing is not about your age. It's about, do you have something profound, something touching, something transformative that you really want to share? And in my case, I thought so, and that's why I really decided to do this.
To tell your story.
Yes, to tell my story, and I wanted to tell it myself.
Very good.
Because quite often we also leave it for other people to tell for us.
And you never know what they'll say about you.
Yes.
Daktari, you right now are a PS, okay?
Yes.
And many people have interacted with you now from that level, from principal secretary in government. But there are others who've interacted with you in other areas. Starting from the present, just summarize your journey. Who is Juma Mukhwana?
Yes, born in Bungoma in the mid-60s. Brought up in the village, running around, looking after our sheep, our cattle. I had a very rich and interesting background because my grandfather, the late, of course, Opicho Wenganga, I'll describe him as a man who lived ahead of himself. He had his wealth counted in animals. He didn't have a bank account. But he was eager and enthusiastic to pick up the ideas that the white man was bringing. Then comes in my father, and clearly he also lived ahead of himself. I've already described him briefly when I was here. This is a man who, when everybody was keeping traditional cattle, he thought he needed to keep the cattle of the white person. And so he had dairy cows. He had a motorbike, a 250cc BSA of his own. When the neighbors, the way I see them, they looked at him, they saw a strange man that was really not part of us. But he also had very difficult principles because he believed that as children, you have to earn what you ate. You have to perform well, you have to be disciplined, you have to work hard because the real reward of life, in his own words, lived in working, hard work. And he did not mince his words about it. He was a control freak. He was somebody that was always smartly dressed. And what was interesting is he also imposed those standards to his friends and his relatives. So if you wanted him to visit you, to eat in your house, you had to keep a level of hygiene that was acceptable to him. And if he thought that you are not doing it, he did not gossip about it. He told you on your face, he told you you are a dirty man, and I will not deal with you. Yeah. So therein emerges me. So when I look at that environment, there was quite a bit to learn. That a man has to work for what they eat. That if you really want to make it in life, you have to work hard, you have to be disciplined, you have to have a goal, you have to be focused, you have to have a clarity of mind where you really want to go. But also you should dream bigger. So you should not limit yourself. And I think within that environment where I was brought up, I was taught to think, I was taught to dream beyond what I can see. And I think one thing that I can say about today is that dreaming has taken me through many mountains, through many valleys. I have traveled a short road, but it has been quite, I would say, something that I can say has been profound. And at the end of that tunnel, at the end of that road, those valleys and sharp corners, has emerged somebody that is really different. It's like going through the hottest furnace. If you put iron and you are able to produce steel, so you come out and you look at the world, and you feel like, yes, I have gone to the world. If you read my book, I said, I thought that I was going to change the world. But then in my travel and in my experience, the world has changed me, because at every corner, every episode, I learned something different, and it informed me, it changed my thinking. So in the end, my question then was, how do I use this experience to impact, especially the young people? Yes, because I sit with young people and they think they have a lot of problems. and they think they have more problems than those of us who were born earlier had. I really don't think so. That if I look at my life, I see a situation where young people think that they have a lot of problems, and somebody is responsible for those problems, and especially these old people in the room. But when I look at my journey and my story, when I finished the University of Nairobi in 1991, the World Bank had already asked this government, the government, to stop employing veterinarians. So they said animals are a private property. So why is government hiring people to take care of animals?
Of private property.
Yes, of private property. So if somebody needs veterinary services, they should look for a private vet. So I've come out of the university, and the first thing, of course, that previously every group that finished my previous classes, people got employment jobs before they sat for the final exam. So some people, even who had supplementaries, first of all reported. If you are a district veterinary officer in Taita, you reported, then you came back to sit for supplementary exams. When I was finishing, I was told there is no job. And right there, you had to think of this is the situation you are in. It is your situation. How do you deal with it? And so who I am is that I don't like using the word self-made, but I think that the inner part of me has been that the word impossible doesn't exist, and the word failure doesn't exist. So when I'm presented with a situation, the best I do is to say, what can I do to thrive, to achieve my goals, even if there are obstacles. And so part of the skills that I've picked along the way is that really failure is in our mind. Failure is never in the environment. So as you look at this environment, and as you think that it's a very difficult environment, and as you blame others and you blame yourself, and you think it can't work, in that same environment, there are people who are doing extremely well, even people who are younger than you. If you just look wider and look more keenly, and decide that you will play your role, you will use your skills in a way that benefits you and also benefits society. So in the end, I think that I am that person that is. The book describes. I have a very persistent spirit, very passionate, and failure has never been part of my story. And so in every situation, whether it's politics, whether it's work, I pick the lesson and it makes me stronger.
It moves into something else.
It takes me into the next level, and that's how it works for me. And so in the end, you are better prepared, you have better shock absorbers, you have clarity of mind on what your next action is.
Let's look at that story. You studied veterinary medicine as your first degree at the university.
Yes.
What drove you to do vet?
Yes, I had been, as I said, my father lived ahead of himself. So he, in the 70s, we just got an independence. He decides to go to the AFC. He takes a loan of 10,000 shillings, 10,000, and he wants to buy dairy cows, Ashas and Frishas that were not even available here. These cows had to be more or less flown in from the UK. And you can imagine one cow was 1,000 or thereabout, including all the shipping and everything. So eventually these cows are delivered to his village in Rwanda. He has smartly fenced his farm. He has paddocked it. But he's not, in my now reflecting on it, he's not really ready for them. My mother has no idea what these animals are and how to look after them. And so we are all grappling with what is happening. But we have a very interesting disease, which had not been described even at that time. It's something called the East Coast fever that was caused by ticks. So the cows would get sick. Interestingly, this East Coast fever does not actually affect our traditional animals. So the cebus are resistant to it.
No, they're fine.
They are fine with it. They can carry as many ticks as you want, and they will still give you milk. But these new fellas, one tick and they're trembling. And what was even more interesting was that at that time there was no cure for that disease. So if a cow got that disease, it died. So we have here. You have a situation very nicely. New cows. Your neighbors are admiring you. They are different. They are bigger. They are smarter. You can call them beautiful. They are giving you 10, almost 20 times more milk than what everybody else is getting. But then two problems arise. One is, who is going to buy the milk? I don't think
people want the milk.
Yes,
but can they afford to buy
they
it?
can't afford it. Yeah. So all of a sudden you have this milk that nobody can afford to buy. Yeah. So you have more milk than you need. That was the first problem that I see my father going through. And the next issue is that these cows get sick. And remember this time, we did not even have, we were part of the larger, there was no Bungoma district, there's no Busia district. We were part of like Kakamega district, actually North Kavirondo. So the only Muzungu veterinarian was sitting in Kakamega. So when the cows get sick, it took us 1 or 2 days to reach the veterinarian to tell him that this cow is sick. Then because of other logistics, it would take another 2 days to arrive. And quite often, he arrived after the cow had died. So one by one, and because of so every time they died, my mothers, because we had several of them, would cry. They really cried. And as I looked at my mother crying, I thought, could I be of any use in this situation? So in one of these days, I tell my mother, Mommy, don't cry. When I grow up, I want to be a veterinarian. This guy that comes here when the cows are dead, I will be here when the cows are sick. I will treat them from here because I've looked at what he does and I think it is something I can do. But fast forward, I joined in. So it was very clear.
Pause there a little bit.
Yes.
As the villagers in your homestead are looking at these dying cows, knowing that they are the only cows and everybody else has just been looking and envying them, what is the superstition going around? First of all, you don't know the name of this disease. It has no cure and all those things.
Yes, there was quite a lot of mixture in terms of what is the cause of the disease. So you are looking at your neighbors, the same ones who cannot afford to buy the milk and wondering whether they could be in some way involved in the death of these animals. And I think when I look back now, many years later, I don't think that the story of my father is any different from many of the farmers that we have even today. So many would want to try new ideas. Our agricultural researchers come to us and tell us we have a new technology, we have new tomatoes, we have new mangoes, and they can change your life. But the story is never complete. Adoption of an agricultural technology does not always give you success because you have to think through the whole process. After I grow this new mango species that will give me more mangoes, where will I sell it? Who will buy it? At what price? And what is my price for growing this? So if you don't know how much you will sell the mango, what is your production cost? And all that then, so part of, and of course I've described this before, that much later on when I looked at, in my area we grow a lot of maize and beans. At some point I was able to sit down with the farmers and ask them, how much does it cost you to grow one bag of maize? And I was surprised that the farmers have never thought about it. They say, why would you ask that? I say, yes, I mean, if you don't know how much it costs you to produce a bag, how do you determine the price? Then they tell me, no, but you see the price is not determined by us. It's determined by somebody else. So it doesn't matter whether I know the production cost or not. At that point, when I want to sell my bag, I'll just sell my bag of maize. And I will sell for different reasons, not because I want to make money. And so you see that is the kind of agriculture that we have created. So you have people producing, they don't know how much it has cost them. And so in the end, and I remember I had a bit of trouble when I was working with an NGO, that our analysis showed that every time the farmers engaged in the business of producing maize, they were losing money. In other words, agriculture was causing them more poverty. So while the extensionist is saying grow more so that you can improve your wealth, the data was showing that nearly 56% of the people that involved themselves in production were getting less than what they were investing. So the message then was that the more you engaged in agriculture, the poorer you became.
Poorer you are.
Because every year you are spending more fertilizer and more seed and more energy and more work, and you're getting less than what you... And one, you don't know about it. Two, the person who is supposed to be giving you extension also has no idea that you're actually becoming poorer engaging into this exercise. So why would we engage ourselves in an exercise that is not bringing you prosperity, but rather bringing you problems? And that is exactly when I put my father's story, I think that's how it looked like.
It reflects in everything.
Yeah.
And Daktari, in your book you talk about 1992, which is a very important year for you, which is your first flight with Dr. Crisfield and flying above Southall and Marsabit, and finally asking you if you wanted to work there. And Dr. Field was not ready for you to work there because he was actually not thinking that you would actually surmount the challenges that were down there. But you being you and being young and in your element, you were ready for what was coming. Just take us through that moment.
Yes, so I finished my veterinary course at the University of Nairobi. I had met, as I've described, Dr. Chris Field was an NGO worker, but he used to come to teach us something very, very specific, something he taught us about camels. One thing that was very curious about our course is, so that I come to answer your question, was that when you are going through the university, you are being taught how to produce dairy cows, Asha, Frisia. So you are told the breeds for milk are this. Your chicken, their layers and the broilers. Your pigs this is the breed. It came from England. This one came from US. One thing that stands out very, very interestingly out of that story is when by the time you finish your 4 years, you have been taught about animals
You don't have.
that we don't have yet.
Seen.
And we have completely ignored the cows that my father, that my grandfather is keeping, the local chicken that are running around, and even the camels. And so, and you see, the idea behind the camels was that there was an NGO that was trying to help camel productivity, because camels are very well adapted to these arid and semi-arid areas. So somehow this NGO had pushed the university to accept the fact that, okay, we can always come and teach for free about camels because we think camels can change the lives of pastoralists. And so I finished my veterinary course. The Farm Africa is looking for a veterinarian. Interestingly, when I went to Samburu to work, then I discovered that there was no single person that had graduated with a veterinary course, even a diploma, in the whole current county of Samburu. So the NGO is looking for a veterinarian, and there's no local person. So the whole county did not have a veterinarian. Marsabit County did not have a veterinarian. So they are looking for a veterinarian. The only veterinarian they can get is somebody who has a different problem. He has the veterinary knowledge, but he doesn't have the know-how, the experience doesn't come from this place. And in my estimation, being a veterinarian was the smallest part. What you needed to work in Samburu and Marsabit was a different gear. This is an area where there is no water, there is no house.
There's no water readily available.
Yes, the water, the way I know it, where I came from. There was water for a different purpose, because I find that where people go to water their animals, they also drink the water with the animals. And I'm looking at that water and I'm like, is this really?
You've never seen anything.
I've never seen anything like that. That I come to water the animals and I'm also watering myself. And if you want to bathe, which was a very rare.
Get inside.
No. And if you ask me, and I'm not demeaning anyone, I work with pastoralists. I do not remember seeing many of them engaging in this exercise that you do every day called bathing.
Water is scarce.
Because water is scarce. And if you wanted to bathe, then you bathe the same water where the animals, and this is very, very, in my view, dirty water. So I find myself in a very interesting, and then also, how do you provide a service to a people that are on the move.
Yeah.
So this NGO has created a system where if there is a manyata in this village, we set up a tent, and then we provide the service. And the service, it was needed because an average person has 400 cattle, has 300 cattle, but they have no access to treatment, to deworming, extension, and so on. They are in the same problem that I described about my father and the veterinarian. And so they need a veterinarian. But then when the grass in this area is finished, they have to move. And so the NGO had designed it that when they moved, we also move. And so that's why we had something called mobile outreach camp. So I find myself in this situation, and honestly speaking, I think in that environment, I learned more than I taught. I don't think I had anything much to teach a Samburu about cattle and how to do them. But then, for me, it was a really humbling experience that a person born in Western Kenya, now the place is quite hot. On an average day, you will talk about 40 degrees, 39 degrees. So you really can't afford to put on the way Muga is putting on here. And so you have your sugar, you have your spear. For most people leaving the university, that is not your dream job.
No.
Because for most of us, you're dreaming of a good office, a good car. So you find yourself in a situation where you are moving with the community from one village to another, providing a service in a language where you cannot even understand. Because I didn't understand the Samburu language, so somebody had to interpret it to me. But I had to learn very quickly. And up to today, I still understand the Samburu language. So if I can count uni, are, one, imet, I've counted up to 5 from 1. That is 30 years ago. But I had to learn the language. I had to know that ngare is water. So I had to learn the language, because now you are not just a veterinarian to treat the animals, but you have to fit in. You have to understand the culture. There is a context. So you're not just going to come with a syringe and a needle, but there is a context that you really must do more to be. So you have to change yourself. Instead of changing the people, instead of being the Messiah, you really have to
come and fit
the job is for you to fit in, to change yourself, to make yourself different, to make yourself ready to offer service. And I don't think that many of us would want to do that. If you got a job that has to change you 360 degrees before you become useful in that job, for many of us would quit. You say, well, I mean, why should I change myself? Am I the one changing you, or are you the one changing me? So in the end, I found that for me to actually provide a service, to function as a veterinarian, I needed a 360-degree change of myself. The way I thought about life, the way I thought about animals, and so on. And so that for me was quite profound.
A game changer. We're discussing a new book by Juma Mukhwana, the Principal Secretary for Industry, My Passion for Change. It's an autobiography. He's telling us his story and the lessons that he's learned through life. We've gone to his upbringing, his first job, and so on and so forth. And our conversation continues with Dr. Juma Mukhwana, the Principal Secretary for Industry, about his book, My Passion for Change, detailing and chronicling your journey through this, working out of university and just meeting the World Bank conditionalities that we now say that, you know what, we're not giving you free money like this. You, government, you have to stop doing things that people, wacha watu wajisort. And you're trained as a vet doctor, and the government is no longer now employing extension service workers, whether in vet or in agriculture or in health. And you went now to work in NGO, worked in Samburu. How did you move out of Samburu? How did you advance your education? How did you end up in America?
Thank you. Yes, and so after a few years in Samburu, I do another daring thing. I decided I'm venturing into business. So I had a few sheep and goats that I had acquired in the course of my life in Samburu. Quite substantial, because I had nearly 300 goats of my own and about 80 or so cattle, so I sell them. And my idea tells me then that I start an agrovet. And to remember Samburu, then I call it nomadic veterinary services. The initial idea was to do this out in Samburu, Then I looked around, and it ended up in Bungoma. But now I touched another raw nerve. So I end up in Bungoma. I'm looking for premises to open this agrovet, and I'm looking for space. So I go to this old man called Mahan Munada. He had a few houses to let, and I go to him and I tell him I'm looking for space to lease, and he looks at me and he's like, "Is something crazy with you? How old are you?" So I'm telling him, I'm about 27 or thereabout, and what is your education? I say, I have a degree. I don't even want to say in which area. And he's asking me, you've gone to university, and instead of looking for a job, you are here asking for space.
You want to open a shop.
Is something wrong with you? I said, there's nothing wrong. So what he did, he told me, go away, let me think about it. Because I don't think he believed that I could do or maybe he thought I had not through the whole process. So I stayed for another 1 week, 2 weeks. I go back to him. And he was a wholesaler, so he sat there and his wife sat in the background. She was the one who always collected the money. So I say, I've come back, and I'm looking for the premises. So he laughs and calls his wife and says, "Come on, listen to this young man." So the wife says, "What does he want?" He says, "He wants a business, premises." So it's like, okay. Whose son are you? I try to say my father's name, it doesn't click. So eventually he asked me, I have some buildings and the rent is 1,500. Can you even afford that? I say, yes, I'll pay for 3 months. and I have the money, so I can remove the money. So he says, okay. So the wife says, why don't we try him? So I pay my 4,500. So I start this agrovet. So I buy a few drugs, and my sister, who was then working at Bungoma High School, her husband was working in Nairobi. So he had bought a bicycle and left it in her home. She didn't use it, but whenever he came home, he would use it. So I start this shop. And so I have my youngest brother, Isaac, had just finished Bungoma High School. So he becomes my first employee. So he sits in the shop. And so I have this bicycle from my brother-in-law, which I use then to treat cows. So I moved from, there was a government veterinary service, but it was a bit inefficient. So it's same problem. You go there, you call them, they will tell you, before we come, weka mafuta kwa gari. Alafu enda nunua dawa. They have not even seen the cow, but they are saying nunua dawa. So it's like the entry cost for you to alafu sasa hii Land Rover unajua ni Land Rover 110. Mafuta ni mingi. So me, I would go with my bicycle. I don't charge for it. I'm doing exercise and I'm like the treating. So I become very popular. Within a few months, everybody's looking for me. This is a doctor with a master's treating on a bicycle. And I was doing a good job. And the farmers were seeing the animals were healing. But then my mother of course, I had come around and I was not sure how to tell her about this business thing. So she's told by her neighbors that kijana yako amerokwa. There is no way somebody can just go to university and then come back and do stupid things.
No, and start riding a bicycle in the village.
Riding a village. Surely. And running from one boma to another. Yes. She was told, my sister, this one, you have a problem. A real one. So she comes. One of this morning, I wake up to come to open the shop. I find her sitting on the veranda. And she says, we have to talk. I say, okay, okay. So we took you to school to come and do these stupid things. Okay, so I say, no, mommy, I'm
making money.
I'm making money, and no, she said, no, you have to look for a job. There's something wrong with you. If nobody has told you, let me tell you from today. But this thing is picking up. You see, initially when I started, we would sell like 300 shillings a day. Then we had gone to 2,000. By the time she's trying to intervene, we are clearly doing well. We would sell even up to 20,000 a day.
You're doing very well.
In my view, we are doing extremely well. And you see, this shop was not just a shop. It was also my house. So what happened was, you see the way the shops are structured. There's the front part and then the back part. So on the back part, I had put my bed and my mattress there. And then my brother, who had a mattress, during the day he would slip the mattress below my bed. But when we close the shop, he puts it in the middle of the shop. Quite self-contained.
Hey.
But long story, today if you go to Bungoma town, there stands a 5-storied building called Nomad House that was built out of that sweat. Much later, when my mother was sick and ailing, I could afford to take her to Nairobi Hospital. And when her bill was 500,000,
You could afford.
Yes. And there in her bed, she told me, so you knew what you are doing after all. But it took a long time for her to understand where I was coming from. And for me, it was practical. I asked myself, if I could sleep in a manyata, what is difficult with what? In fact, what I'm doing is an improvement. and so that crazy idea then created a lot of jobs. In my view, it solved a lot of problems. But I also realized something else as I was treating these cows, that quite often the problem was not the sick cow. That the person who actually needed treating was the owner of the cow. Because 90% of the problems emanated from the fact that people were keeping chicken, pigs, dairy cows that they did not understand how to take care of. So how it did not matter how many times you went back. It did not matter how much drugs you administered. It comes to my mind that what these people need is education. And this is how I transition now from the business into Sacred Africa. So I start a small community-based organization where we would now teach you how to take care of chicken. And the question I asked them was, for example, if you look at your chicken has just hatched 10 chicks, and you leave it to run around. So I asked the mamas, so how many chicks would mature? They say, if you are lucky, 2. So you have 10, and you lose 8, and why are you losing them? Say, the eagle will pick some, then something will happen, then something. So my question to them then was, when this chicken has hatched the chicks, why are they following her? Are they suckling? They say no. So what is it doing? They say, it's looking for food. And which food does it find? They say, it will find a grasshopper here. Wow. So I ask her, so how many grasshoppers do you think this chicken will find in a day? And they'll say, well, some maybe 2, maybe 3. So I ask her, if they find 3, first of all, it needs to feed itself.
And then it has 10 chicks.
And then it has 10 chicks. Do you think it's enough food? They say no. So what do you think is killing your chicken? They say it's actually hunger. So mwewe itachukua moja. So then I ask her, if the chicks are following the mother looking for food, you can actually do a better job of feeding these chicks, isn't it? They say yes. So let's talk about feeding of chicks. So it was a very practical thing, and so when you simplify it, then you realize that is. Sorry.
We need to talk about the launch.
Okay. So this interesting story and others. Today we are launching this book at the Nairobi Club at 6:00. And we really want to invite you. And the book is also available online at Nuria stores. You can buy it online. It will be delivered to your house. And you can enjoy these stories that I'm talking about. It's a very simple story. But for me, it is a very profound and impactful story.
It's a gripping story.
It is. Yes. Practical stories, indeed. Practical stories. Here's the book. This is how it looks like. It's Juma Mukhwana, Autobiography, My Passion for Change, book written by the PS for Industry, just telling his life and his journey and up to the point where he's gotten and what he has gotten to understand. Asante sana for joining us, PS.
Thank you so much.
Nairobi Club.
And thank you for hosting me, Nairobi Club, 6
p.m.
And also at Nuria book stores. You can buy it online.
Okay.
So it's available. Okay. Thank you so much.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.